Hello, my name is Will Vetch, and I'll be interviewing Emperor Julius Caesar today. Now, let's stop wasting time, let's get right into it. So, Mr. Caesar, how does it feel to be a dictator?
When you are a dictator, you feel powerful. With all the Roman political and military power at your control, it gives a man a sense of invincibility and immortality. Being a dictator of a country such as Rome can be compared to being a god. Similarities are because you live the life of an immortal, with the fancy palace, clothes, food, and power.
Yes, I see. Now, do you believe you deserve this position?
In response to your question, I think I do deserve to be a dictator. I conquered the Gauls and expanded the Roman Empire to the north. I proved to be the most powerful leader of the time. I made Rome stronger and better than it ever was before, and I earned my place as a dictator.
Okay, well, I have another question for you. What was going through your mind in the gamble of the Rubicon?
In response to your question, many things were going through my mind in the gamble of the Rubicon, but the main thing was that I was thinking that either I would have to give up my army and consulship, or take Rome and successfully rise in the positions of power. The risk of losing against Pompey and receiving nothing was not as great as the gain of controlling Rome, so I went across Rubicon.
Okay, so I see how you can put that as your answer, but were there any doubts in your mind? I mean, you couldn't have been 100% positive going through that.
During the crossing of the Rubicon, I had some doubts. There were doubts in my mind when I crossed, because I just directly defied the government and Pompey, and now I had to face him and his army. But despite my doubts, I continued, and it turned out to end in my favor.
Okay, so now you being dictator, do you think your reforms were a little extreme and a little quick?
In response to your question about my reforms being quick and extreme, I agree that they were somewhat quick, but I do not think they were extreme. I had just taken control of Rome when I wanted to stay in power. In order to do so, I had to pass reforms which would help me and my allies be able to keep the power.
I see. Well, the Senate was once 300 men, now 900, and most of them your friends. How is that in any way fair?
In response to your question, the Senate was once 300 men who were all patricians, but now, after I ruled, it became 900 and full of my friends. It may seem unfair to some people, but in retrospect, it's politics. People would use allies to help them get elected or stay in power. All I was doing was enforcing the strength of my political views with more supporters in positions of power.
What about you taking the position of both tribune and dictator? Isn't that a little bit extreme?
In response to your question, taking the position of both tribune and dictator was not a little extreme. When I was appointed dictator and later dictator for life, people with the position of tribune could have used their power to oppose me with intercession and sacrosanctity. All I did when taking the position of tribune was secure my position and allow my political views to reign.
Well, in response to your answer, your social reforms were pretty major and upsetted the patricians and the equestrians. If you could do it over again, would you change that?
In response to your question, my social reforms were pretty major and they did unsettle the patricians and equestrians. Would I change that? Maybe. I would change some of them to something more compromising between the wealthy and poor, which would create some equality and balance of power and wealth. I would make it so that the division between the classes was not so big and they were closer to each other.
Another one of your big social changes was your change in the calendar, which was a very big change. But was it truly necessary to the Roman people?
In response to your question, the change I made in the calendar was a big change, but was it really necessary? I don't think it was necessary as much as symbolic. The Roman calendar being both placed represented the Roman Senate being defeated and replaced by me. It symbolized my rise to power in a new period under Julius Caesar.
Also, in response to that, one of your political reforms was to make sure proconsuls only lasted for 2 years. Why did you do that?
In response to your question, one of my political reforms was to only allow proconsuls to last for 2 years. I did that so that none of the proconsuls could acquire control of their province and use their army to assault me. I wanted to keep it so that I had the power, and the people who would stop me did not get the chance to raise an army to oppose me. The people controlling the provinces had the opportunity to raise an army, but with their limit being 2 years, I could easily defeat whatever meager army they could prepare.
The colonization of new lands was not very liked by the wealthy people. Yet you still did it. Why was that?
In response to your question, the colonization of near lands was not very liked by the wealthy, yet I still did it. I did it because although the wealthy did not like it, the poor did. And by doing this, I gained their support, which would help me during wars where we would have volunteers to fight. Or if the wealthy decided to oppose me in attack, the poor would come to my aid and help me defeat my adversaries.
Ah, yes, I see. Well, when crossing the Rubicon, you said you were rolling the die. But did you also think of these reforms and changes you were going to make to the Roman people?
In response to your question, when I did cross the Rubicon, I said I was rolling the die. During that time, I thought of the reforms, but not too much, because at the time, I thought of defeating Pompey in the Senate, who were trying to stop me, and then taking over Rome. I thought of the reforms, but not a lot, because I was planning my assault on Rome. After I accomplished my control of Rome, then I began to think of the reforms and put them into power.
Okay, so now on to your military career. Do you think your victories in Gaul helped your success with the people?
In response to your question, I do think that my victories in Gaul helped my success with the people. I think it helped because once I won in Gaul, my army became loyal and people recognized me as a military commander. They saw me as both a military and political man, which helped give them more respect for me, which would make them follow me more. So my victories in Gaul gave them more incentive to follow me.
Even though you were not given the title emperor, people still think of you as an emperor. Why do you think that?
In response to your question, even though I was not given the name or title emperor, I was still considered one. That is because people compared me to later emperors because of my accomplishments and success. My position as dictator for life put me in their eyes as a powerful man, which compared me to the emperors of later.
All in all, do you believe your career was successful or just a mere stepping stone for a new emperor to come in and take control?
In response to your question, I do believe my career was successful, and not just a mere stepping stone for someone else. I believe my career was successful because I successfully conquered Gaul and reformed the government, which could have led to other success, but mostly my accomplishments helped me achieve a great level of power in Rome. The conquest of Gaul helped me, and later emperors, because of the expansion of land, but it helped me because it gave the people a new respect for me, and because my career was successful, helping me take control of Rome.
Emperor Julius, you were one of the first to focus on the poor and discard the worries of the rich. How do you think this worked to your advantage?
I was one of the first to focus on the poor and discard the rich, and I think this works to my advantage because it puts me in the eyes of the poor as a savior or liberator, as opposed to earlier leaders who disregard the poor and help the rich. With this new attitude, the poor supported me and backed my success, which would later come in handy if any troubled times came towards me.
Then again, going back in time, this did end up costing you your life. So, if you could change it, would you focus more on the rich or still, again, on the poor?
As stated in your question, focusing on the poor did end up costing my life. So, if I was to go back, would I still try to help the poor, only or maybe attend to the rich? Yes, I would probably help the poor, because during the time when I lived, the poor supported and helped me. Even after my death, the people loved me and were very angry when shown my body after my assassination. Supporting the poor helped me during my lifetime, and even after death, I was loved.
All in all, going back throughout your life, would you still cross the Rubicon?
In response to your question, all in all, I still would have crossed the Rubicon if I had known what the future would hold. I would, because I would have done it, because I would have known that I would control Rome, become a dictator, and then a dictator for life. I would know that I would put all the political and social reforms into power, gain the support of the poor, even get murdered by the rich. Despite that setback, I still would have done it because of the great gain in power and increase in popularity.
Well, thank you for your time, Emperor. It's been a real pleasure.
It was a pleasure answering the questions.